Have you ever been told you don't belong? Mocked for your dreams, overlooked for your brilliance? What if I told you that the same people who laugh at you today could be begging for a chance to work with you tomorrow? This is the story of how that happens. The cameras never stop flashing. Celebrities move like silk across the crimson carpet outside the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Paparazzi barked names, gowns floated like dreams, and every step was a statement. Bold, rich, exclusive. And then came her. She didn't step from a limo or emerge flanked by stylists. Jalisa Monroe walked in alone, no entourage, no designer name behind her. Just confidence stitched into every thread of the gown she wore. The dress shimmered under the lights. A molten gold creation that hugged her silhouette like it had been poured on. It was striking, different, and undeniably handcrafted. Not machine perfect. Human, raw, real. The whispers started before she reached the steps. Who even is that? Wait, is that duct tape at the seams? She looks like she made it in her basement. Laughter. Quiet at first, then bolder. A swarm of fashion bloggers hunched behind their phones, already drafting captions. Met Gala flop, one tweeted. DIY goes wrong, wrote another. Her photo was already circling the web, sandwiched between Chanel and Givenchy, mocked for daring to stand among them. But Jalisa didn't flinch. She posed, deliberately. Chin high, shoulders square. She met the camera lenses head on, her deep brown eyes defiant. She knew they didn't recognize her. Not the reporters, not the stylists or celebrities, or the gatekeepers perched behind velvet ropes. To them, she was an intruder, some bold party crasher who'd stitched up a fantasy and tried to play fashion royalty. What they didn't know, the gown she wore, was only the sister of another. Its twin, cut from the same fabric and forged from the same soul, was currently sealed in a garment bag. Hours from now, it would drape the body of the biggest name in music, a queen, an icon. And when that moment came, the laughs would stop cold. But for now, Jalisa stood there, alone in the chaos, ridiculed by critics who couldn't see past their labels. Because they didn't know. They didn't know the gold she wore was not just fabric, it was fire. And fire doesn't wait for permission to burn. Before the flashbulbs, before the whispers, before the runway of ridicule at the Met, there was Harlem. Not the gentrified Harlem you see in travel blogs. The real Harlem, the one with cracked sidewalks that told stories and brownstones that echoed jazz through open windows. It was there, on the second floor of a creaky walk-up on 145th Street, that Jalisa Monroe first heard the hum of a sewing machine. She was 6 years old. Her feet didn't reach the pedal, but her eyes watched every move her grandmother made. Each stitch, each snip of the scissors, each gentle hum of a gospel tune as fabric came alive beneath her hands. "Come here, baby," Grandma Lula had said one evening, motioning her over with calloused fingers. "Let me teach you how to turn thread into thunder." And she did. By 9, Jalisa could cut a pattern from newspaper, line a bodice, and hand-stitch hems straighter than most grown women. While other kids played tag in the streets, Jalisa sat cross-legged on a hardwood floor surrounded by a scrap fabric and dreams too loud to whisper. They didn't have money for name-brand fabric or fancy machines. Most of her early work came from church donation bins, old curtains, bridesmaid dresses, whatever could be washed and reborn. But what they lacked in material, they made up for in magic. "Don't you chase no labels, Jalisa," Grandma Lula would say, pinning a sleeve with precision. "One day, labels gon' chase you." Those words lived in her, echoed every time someone called her work too ethnic, too loud, or too urban. The world wanted her to shrink, to smooth out the edges of her style until she blended in. But Harlem had raised her bold. By 16, she was designing prom dresses for girls up and down the block. Girls who wanted to feel like royalty, even if their crowns were invisible. By 22, her apartment was a studio. Bolts of fabric in the bathtub, sketches taped to the fridge, dreams pinned to every wall. She wasn't trained in Milan or Paris. Her school was her grandmother's kitchen. Her legacy, sewn by hand, stitch by stitch. And now, standing on fashion's grandest stage in a homemade gown, they laughed. But Halisa, she was just getting started. Jalisa had dreams bigger than the city skyline. After high school, she packed her portfolio in a beat-up leather binder and sent applications to every top fashion school she could find. Parsons, FIT, Central St. Martin's, SCAD. She stayed up until 3 a.m., refining sketches, photographing dresses on borrowed mannequins, writing essays soaked in soul and sewn with vision. She waited. Weeks turned into months. And then, one by one, the rejection letters came in. Cold, templated, sterile. We regret to inform you. Each envelope felt like a slap, each line another reminder that she didn't belong in the world of high fashion. One rejection hit harder than the rest. It was from a prestigious New York program she had practically begged to consider her. She had shown up at the campus uninvited, wearing one of her own designs, just to get 5 minutes with a recruiter. They looked her up and down and said, "Your work's interesting, but it lacks polish. It's a little too unconventional, not commercial enough. Translation, too raw, too black, too loud." That night, Jalisa cried into a pile of unfinished gowns, not because they said no, but because deep down she feared they were right. But then, she remembered Grandma Lula's voice. "They'll teach you how to follow rules, but baby, you were born to write them." So Jalisa pivoted. If the fashion world wouldn't give her a runway, she'd build her own. She started uploading time-lapse videos on TikTok, stitching gowns from repurposed materials, showing the process from thread to transformation. Her designs weren't just clothes. They were stories, each piece with its own name, its own origin. The Harlem bloom, the ancestral silk, streetlight royalty, and the people responded. Followers turned into fans. Fans turned into customers. Comments flooded in. "I'd wear this to my wedding. This looks like couture. How are you not famous yet?" But still, no Vogue articles, no Fashion Week invites, no showroom deals. She had gone viral more than once, yet the industry kept its doors locked tight. Until one night, when in the quiet scroll of DMS and notifications, something extraordinary happened. A message from a name she never thought she'd see. It was 2:37 a.m. Jalisa was lying on her studio apartment floor, surrounded by fabric clippings, empty coffee mugs, and a half-finished gown made from a vintage curtain. She had just posted a video, one of her most daring designs yet. A deep emerald green gown with structured shoulders and cascading panels that floated like ivy in the wind. She called it Emerald Rebirth. In the caption she wrote, "From scraps to sculpture. We wear our ancestors' prayers like armor." It barely had 3,000 views when her phone buzzed. At first she thought it was spam. The profile picture was blacked out, the name simple. At official stylist B. The message read, "Hi Halisa, I work with Beyonce. She saw your green dress and she's interested in discussing a custom piece. Is this your direct contact?" Her heart stopped. She blinked. Read it again. "Beyonce." She clicked the profile. Verified. Photos from backstage at the Renaissance tour. Tags from Ivy Park shoots. This was real. This was very real. Jalisa didn't scream. She couldn't. The air had left the room. Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "Yes, this is me." 2 minutes later, her email pinged. Then came the NDA. Then the formal inquiry from Beyonce's team. The Queen herself had seen Emerald Rebirth. They wanted something in that spirit. Regal, original, earthborn glam, the stylist had said. A piece that felt rooted in Black heritage, but futuristic in silhouette. No big production house, no assistants. Just her. They'd seen the soul in her stitching. That same night, Halisa sat at her desk until dawn, sketching ideas. Her hands moved like they were possessed. Every line, every fold, every concept flowed like prophecy. She could see the finished dress before it existed. She wasn't just designing a garment now. She was crafting legacy. No announcement was made. No articles were written. Jaleesa didn't tell a soul. She knew better. NDA meant silence, but her spirit was screaming, because the fashion world may have slammed every door in her face. But Beyonce had just cracked open a kingdom. The world outside kept moving. Celebrities on red carpets, trends rising and falling on social media, fashion houses releasing collections that looked like recycled ideas in new packaging. But Jaleesa? She was somewhere else entirely. In her Harlem apartment, the air was thick with fabric dust and magic. She'd pushed her mattress against the wall to make room. Sketches were taped to every surface. The fridge, the closet door, even the ceiling. Spools of thread lined her windowsill like soldiers. And in the center of it all, a dress form draped in shimmering black silk that caught the light like liquid obsidian. This was the dress, the one Beyoncé's team had greenlit. Jaleesa called it Mother of Stars. Inspired by African tribal armor, celestial constellations, and the quiet power of ancestral resilience. Every stitch, every pleat, every hand-sewn embellishment whispered a story. She didn't sleep much, didn't party, didn't post. For weeks she worked in silence, the kind of silence that only comes when you're birthing something sacred. Her sewing machine became an extension of her soul. At night, the hum echoed through the floorboards. Her neighbors didn't complain. They knew something special was happening behind those walls. But not everyone did. While Jaleesa worked, the fashion world kept ignoring her. No interviews, no features, not even a mention during New York Fashion Week. People thought she'd vanished. Some even messaged, "You fell off." She smiled every time. They didn't know the queen herself was about to wear her work. One night, while hand-beating the neckline, Jaleesa pricked her finger. A single drop of blood fell onto the fabric. She froze. Then slowly, she smiled. "All right," she whispered, just like Grandma Lula used to. "Now it's really mine." When the dress was finished, she packed it in the box Beyoncé's team had sent. Labeled, sealed, shipped. No fanfare, no press release. Just a girl from Harlem sending a piece of her soul to the woman who made the world stop with a mic and a stare. And as the MET Gala approached, Jaleesa made one more decision. She would attend too. Not as Beyoncé's designer. They'd reveal that later. She would go as herself, wearing the sister dress, the one they'd soon laugh at. Before the world realized the joke was on them, the invitation came from a friend, a rising stylist who had just secured a last-minute +1 to the Met Gala. She begged Jaleesa to come. At first, Jaleesa hesitated. She hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks. Her hands were raw. Her nerves were shot. But something inside her whispered, "Go. Watch what happens." So she did. She didn't wear Chanel. She didn't borrow Dior. She didn't call in favors for a glam squad. Instead, she wore the sister dress, a parallel creation to Beyoncé's. Same silhouette, same molten gold tones, but less armor and more flow. It was softer, freer, like a prelude to the power Beyoncé's version would soon unleash. Jaleesa styled herself, slicked her hair into a low bun, wore her grandmother's earrings. No makeup artist, just a sweep of gold across her eyelids and the kind of confidence you can't fake. When she stepped onto the carpet, the reactions were instant and brutal. A stylist with a headset frowned as she passed. A camera operator lowered his lens. Influencers whispered like vipers in sequins. "She looks like she made that in her kitchen. Who even let her in? This ain't a fashion moment. This is a Pinterest fail." Jaleesa heard every word, felt every glance like a needle to the skin. The press didn't even ask her name. She posed anyway, because the camera doesn't care about your resume, only your presence. And hers radiated purpose. Inside the gala, it was more of the same. Champagne flutes, cold smiles, hushed judgment. She sat at a side table near the back, watching gowns swirl past like expensive fog. No one knew who she was. No one knew what was coming. And when the whispers got too loud, she just smiled to herself and thought, the queen hasn't arrived yet. Because Jaleesa knew that at any moment, the double doors would open. The crowd would gasp. The carpet would explode in flashes, and Beyoncé would step out wearing her masterpiece. Then the laughter would stop, and the silence would be deafening. It began with a stir, the kind of collective shift in energy that travels through a room before a legend walks in. The murmurs started low. Stylists froze mid-sentence. A handler dropped his earpiece. Photographers turned as one. Then the double doors at the top of the Met steps parted, and there she was, Beyonce, cloaked in glory, moving like time had stopped just for her. She wore Jalisa's dress, the true one, the centerpiece, the crown jewel of the night, a liquid gold creation molded to her frame like it had grown from her skin. Angular shoulders that evoked warrior queens, beaded constellations spiraling down the train like galaxies drawn by hand. Every bead had been sewn by Jalisa's fingers, every curve cut by her vision. The crowd lost its mind. Gasps, screams. Paparazzi yelling, stumbling backward, nearly falling over one another to get the shot. Social media exploded within seconds. Beyoncé just redefined MET Gala fashion. This dress, where did it come from? Not even Versace could have pulled this off. And then, the real shock. As Beyoncé ascended the stairs, her stylist stepped forward with a mic for a brief press moment. It was tradition. Everyone expected a nod to a luxury house. But Queen Bey leaned in and said calmly, clearly, and without hesitation, "This gown was designed by Jalisa Monroe, a visionary from Harlem. No big fashion house, just talent, just truth." Boom! The press gasped. Whispers turned into frantic typing. Vogue editors scrambled. Designers turned pale. Jalisa, standing unnoticed in the crowd just moments earlier, felt the earth shift beneath her heels. People who had laughed now craned their necks. Bloggers who had mocked her now rushed to identify her. The girl they'd dismissed, the one they'd whispered about and brushed past, had designed Beyoncé's showstopper. Suddenly, all eyes searched the crowd, and someone pointed. "There she is! That's her! That's Jalisa!" In an instant, microphones swung. Reporters lunged, phones raised. Security even started to clear a path. But Jalisa didn't run. She stood tall, smoothed her dress, lifted her chin. The same dress they'd ridiculed an hour ago now looked like royalty in disguise, because the world had just learned her name. Her inbox flooded. Her socials exploded. Her name? On the lips of every fashion editor from Paris to Seoul. Unknown Harlem designer stuns at MET. Beyoncé's jaw-dropping gown wasn't from a fashion house. It was from a kitchen studio. The future of couture has a name. Jalisa Monroe. The same magazines that never returned her emails were now begging for interviews. Brands that once turned up their noses were offering contracts she never imagined. But the real kicker, a rep from the very school that had rejected her, the one that said her designs were too unconventional, sent a sleek email with a subject line that read, "We'd like to honor you at our spring gala." Jalisa chuckled. She didn't respond. Instead, she took a meeting with one of the largest fashion conglomerates in the world. They offered her a deal, full funding, her own label, worldwide distribution. One catch, they wanted creative oversight. In other words, control. They wanted to clean her up, polish her style, smooth her edges so she could fit into their showroom like a safe investment. Jalisa leaned back, crossed her legs, and said what she once feared to say, no, because she remembered Grandma Lula's voice. "Don't chase labels, baby. Let them chase you." And now they were. She chose differently, opened her own atelier in Harlem, hired local seamstresses, launched Monroe Studio, a brand that didn't just design clothing but told stories. Stories of girls from nowhere who stitched their way into history. Her wait list stretched for months. Celebrities called, stylists begged. But she stayed selective, because this wasn't about fame anymore. It was about ownership. At the next year's Met Gala, Jalisa didn't arrive as someone's guest. She arrived as a sponsor, walked the carpet in a gown of her own making. This time, no one laughed, no one whispered, no one looked away. The same industry that mocked her had now built an altar in her name. Because when you walk in your truth, No matter how loud they laugh, no matter how many doors they slam, eventually they have no choice but to open the gates. And this time, Jaleesa didn't just walk through them. She owned the building. In the end, it wasn't the red carpet that defined Jaleesa Monroe. It was the quiet resilience she carried through every rejection, every laugh, every closed door. Because true success isn't about fitting in. It's about standing tall in your truth, creating your own path, and letting the world catch up.